It's often said that the one thing we can be sure of is change. Whether that's in our personal lives or in our careers, we can always be assured that there will be ups and downs and highs and lows that we often have to navigate. And oftentimes, when it comes to our careers, we're not aware of the resources that are actually available to us that would be able to help us to be able to navigate all the various challenges that life throws at our careers and our aspirations. My name is Sihle Bolani, and welcome to the Workplace Revolution. Today, I'm joined by Boniwe Dunster, who is an IPM Human Resources Practitioner of the Year finalist in 2022.
Yes, girl.
With over 16 years experience from various industries, including manufacturing, management consulting, and financial services. She is passionate about education, people development, fairness in the workplace, community projects, and uses her work and general life experience together with the network she has built over the years to educate people about the world of work, its everyday dynamics, and how to navigate its complexities. She is the founder of Blue Eagle Human Capital Practice, which was founded in November 2021 with the aim of simplifying HR concepts and making HR advisory and services available to everyone. She holds a postgrad diploma in labor law with the University of the Western Cape, a certificate in coaching from the University of Cape Town, a postgrad diploma in leadership development from Stellenbosch, a BA in industrial psychology from Northwest University, and national diploma in public relations from Val. I mean, girl, my page ran out of space. When you're welcome to the Workplace Revolution.
Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to finally be able to sit with you. It's the first time we've met, but we've been in each other's digital world for the longest time.
Yes.
And you have become somebody who has really become a well of information and education for so many people on our online communities, and obviously through the work that you're doing as well. But why HR?
Why HR, right? To be honest, I never studied HR as my first choice. It somehow found me in the system. One manager said, let me interview you. And he interviewed me for an HR role, got the job, and then I was never able to get out. But having been in that space for so long, I realized it's where I want to be. The space allows me to live my purpose, and which is actually educating people and making sure that people are well taken care of. And the best way to do that for me right now is through corporates or through individuals that are in corporate, trying to understand how they can navigate it, because I think it's not as easy as we assume it to be. To navigate the complexities, the challenges. You don't know where to go. People doubt us and our credibility as HR professionals. And I wanted to find myself in a space whereby I could be credible and I could be available to more people than just being limited to one space. And since then, I've invested, myself in having to acquire a qualification in industrial psychology, in labor law, in coaching, because those are some of the facets that you find in HR, not the hiring and firing as people believe that we do, or rather just processing payroll. And I think, that's why HR, and where I am right now, I'm comfortable, I'm happy, and I think I have found my space and my niche.
I love that. And so many people are searching for that space for themselves. So I love that you have found that. Now, one of the interesting things from your bio, which I wouldn't be able to continue this conversation without touching on this first, is the fact that, one of the things that you're passionate about is fairness in the workplace.
Sure.
And oftentimes when people think of HR, that is not the first thing that comes to mind.
Definitely.
Instead, it's HR is against employees, HR is for the organization, they don't have our best interests at heart. What do you think are some of the missteps that the HR profession has made that makes people feel that way?
Yeah. One thing about HR, or people often say HR is not your friend. You hear that quite a lot, and you don't blame them. People who often say that is because that's how they have experienced HR. However, I think some of the things we get wrong as HR professionals in our space, it's not really understanding our roles. And part of our role is actually being people advocates. So we need to advocate for people in the workplace. The reason we need to advocate for people is because we are the custodians of the processes and the policies, is because we understand how human behavior works. We are behavioral scientists by profession, and that really enables us to be better, advisors or, practitioners in our space. And people don't understand the people advocacy part of it. And I think that's what's neglected most of the time. And then you come to the business itself. right? Still with the same principle, right? How do I advise you better? How do I make good recommendations for your business, for you to be able to get the best out of people, to be able to get the results? But we forget the human element to say, to enable this, you need employees. And for your employees to deliver for you, they need to be well taken care of. And understanding that there would be employees that will definitely do the wrong things, people that will be disengaged, people that will, be disruptive. We can't take away that. But it's like, how do we bring the harmony into it? And I think that's where we lose it. And purely because we are employees ourselves first, we have a scorecard to chase, and sometimes our scorecards aren't really people-centric. And that's why it's easy to overlook that element. And I think that's where we get it wrong. And I think as soon as we can, put ourselves out there, position ourselves, as people advocates, and also advocating for business success, then bringing that balance can help us to be more trustworthy professionals. And people can come to us the same way that business does come to us directly when they have a problem with Sihle. I have a problem with Sihle. Help me to do something about Sihle. Whether it's good or bad, it's something else. But they can confidently come to us. But we can't get employees confidently coming to us to say, I struggle with manager XYZ, and these are the challenges. How do I navigate it? Please help us with an intervention. Please, try to intervene or give me guidance on how to do that. And that is what is lacking.
One of the things that I have certainly noted over the course of my career as well, whether it was during employment or even now in my consulting work, is oftentimes people see HR as a function that is weaponized, right? And so it becomes a case of it's only the people who have a certain level of organizational power who can use the weapon that is HR in order to advance whatever agenda that they may have. And I guess the question then comes down to, from an internal marketing perspective. So for instance, if I'm in the marketing department and I am wanting people in the organization to know what we do, you're going to know because there's flyers everywhere, there's events, there's communication, there's all of these things. If people want to plan an event, they'll probably come to the marketing department first for advice and for support and all of these things. Why do people not know what HR actually does?
It goes back to my earlier point to say, how do we take ownership in terms of making sure that we solidify ourselves in that space? It somehow looks like we are waiting for someone to come and say, hey, this is what HR does. No one is going to come and tell the workforce what we do. We need to take initiative as HR practitioners to actually do that. And to your earlier point around people weaponizing HR, oftentimes the business hides behind HR policies and practices. If they don't want to do something, they will say to employees, HR said we can't. HR said we don't have money. HR said we can't fund your studies. Guys, they give us power when it suits them, but they use it to their advantage. We don't make such decisions. We don't make a decision to say, promote Sihle. You need to tell me as a line manager that I need to promote Sihle because this is what she has achieved. She's already operating at the next level. How do we make that happen in the next, 18 to 24 months? So we can actually help them to craft your path to your next promotion. But when they don't want to promote Sihle and they have that conversation with you, they will say, HR said. With what powers? I did not hire Sihle. Sihle does not belong to me, does not even report to me, right? So those are some of the things. It looks like they're weaponizing it, but it's when it suits them, when it suits the powers, or when it suits the line managers' different agendas. And then again, back to us having to position ourselves. What do we do that makes a difference to people? What do we do during that process of having to require, a new position coming in, that the recruitment, the talent acquisition? What do we do, and how do we engage with people when they land in our organizations? Do we tell them what we do? Do we tell them what HR does in an organization? Do we inform them about our policies? Do we unpack those policies? Do we onboard them properly? During that recruitment and onboarding stage, that's when a lot of relationships are built between HR and employees. How you help them transition and cement themselves in the organization through, transitions of different stages, we are there. But if we are not, and we are always chasing recruitment targets, we're always chasing the performance management, timeline. Do we even have scorecards? We don't even check the quality of the scorecards because we are ticking boxes that would actually talk to our scorecards. And for that, we miss an opportunity of actually taking a break to say, what have I done that has made an impact, that has changed the narrative around my profession in the workspace? And I don't think we take enough time as HR professionals to think about that and to actually apply it in our workspaces.
Absolutely true. One of the things that I find myself thinking about quite a bit is obviously how every profession transforms and evolves over time, and the way in which it works evolves. When you think about recruitment processes, for instance, and talent management and whether or not people get promotions, oftentimes the process or the requirements for those things is so unclear for employees. So for instance, if you're thinking about it from a recruitment perspective, now there's an increase in the reliance on technology. So people are submitting CVs and the technology on the recruiting side of it is not picking up certain things on CVs. And honestly, technology can only pick up so much.
Sure.
And so many talented people often fall through the cracks because of the mechanisms that are in place. So even from an interviewing perspective, I have observed interviews where you can see that the hiring manager and the HR person are just reading a list of interview questions that are a script, no matter if you're recruiting a PR person, an HR person, an IT person, it's the same questions being asked. So you're not able to actually assess whether people are a good fit for the organization. So how can we begin to approach it differently? Because even from a talent management and a promotion perspective, people don't know what they actually are aiming for because the conversations are often not had and there's often no clarity around, okay, if I am a junior manager today, what do I need to do to become a middle manager? What are the outcomes that I need to have achieved? And what support do I require?
Sure. I think what's important for us to understand from a corporate perspective, right? HR, IT, and everybody else, we also need to understand the lay of the land and the workforce that we are targeting as an organization. So you also cannot adopt a technology that is used by probably Google or, take a lot on everything that is so advanced, but your workforce doesn't really talk to that technology. So we also need to be able to understand and adapt to the workforce that we are actually recruiting or are our focus areas. So oftentimes people tend to buy technologies because they are the in thing, they're the hot technology in a space, but really it doesn't, and you also want to be part of, of a groupie that's actually using it, but it doesn't really address, your workforce challenges. It doesn't really help you to translate your workforce into the workforce of the future. So I think that's the first mistake that we do. And then when it comes to interviews and how we interview, I had a question yesterday, or rather a comment. Somebody said to me, I asked a question at the end of an interview and I could see the frustration in the panel by me asking. So question is, do we really have a diverse panel when we interview people? And do we have the right people sitting in those interviews? You have an interview guide which will have the competencies, and for you to assess, especially your soft skills competencies, you would actually find the questions are more or less the same. If probably you are assessing for strategic competencies, for customer service and all of those things. But your interview guide also needs to incorporate technical questions. And this is where your line manager comes in because they have those expertise. But does the line manager also understand what kind of technical capabilities are they looking out of an individual, right? And it's called that an interview guide. It's not an interview script. It's a guide. You don't really have to follow it. That's why sometimes you would find us having to jump in between questions, or sometimes we ask one question, but the answer leads to 3 questions being answered, right? So you follow the flow, you read the room, you read the person, and some people, they don't really have the expertise to do that. Then it goes back, do we really have the right people at a management level, at a leadership level, even within the HR practice, that are driving that agenda? And then we talk about leadership and management development. Are they there because they were promoted due to their technical abilities, or they also were identified because they've got good people management skills and they've got the potential to develop into that? And those are some of the things that are often missed in the process. So like I said, people are chasing recruitment numbers. People are chasing to close off a retrenchment process by a certain point in time, because before the financial end, we needed to have saved this out of this process. But we're forgetting the human element in it. And HR, I often say the world of work and HR can be complex. It is complex. The sad part is that everybody thinks HR is easy and it can be done by everybody. And that's why we actually see these things that are actually happening, where people say, but the panel was unhappy with me asking questions. But why? Because by virtue of you sitting in a panel, it means you've got certain level of expertise that will be able to engage the potential candidate, and your engagement can not only be limited to an interview guide. So those are some of the things that we need to look into and we need to address. But it also depends on the organizational culture and the leadership of the organization, if that is something that is important for them. And where it is not important, we will always have these frustrations in the process.
Absolutely. You know, the culture component is such an important part of it. And oftentimes we overlook it from a candidate perspective.
Sure.
Oftentimes people are just wanting an opportunity. So they don't even look out for the markers, or they don't know what markers to look out for.
Sure.
And from an interviewer perspective, so the employer oftentimes comes in with that positional power.
Sure.
You know, where we're making the decision, we have the power, we ask you the questions, you're not here to interview us. How do people navigate that? Because, I mean, even with the example that you mentioned,
Sure.
because people now, and particularly as the workforce gets younger, this younger generation has a whole lot of questions, you know, and I have an 18-year-old to prove it, you know, and if you don't have the emotional intelligence to be able to allow people to ask and question and challenge you, obviously with respect and professionalism, but if you lack that ability, you're doing such a disservice, not just for the person that you are potentially hiring, but for the organization as a whole, because what is the culture that you're setting out?
Right. And then it also talks about my previous point around leadership development and management development. So what kind of people are we advancing to such positions, right? And COVID-19 pandemic has proved to us that it's not only technical abilities that would actually advance, careers, or that would advance businesses, right? It was the softer skills, that were needed at that point in time. Your empathy, your emotional intelligence, your interpersonal skills, your intercultural skills, right? Because we were working remotely. So having to assert your power through your presence in the office was not there. And a lot of leaders actually struggled, because now you don't see bumps on seats.
Yeah.
Now you don't see that I've got actually 30 people reporting to me. So that disempowers you, because that huge department that you are responsible for, you can't see it with a naked eye, and you are sitting at home from 8 to 5 and you feel useless, right? Because your leadership, or your management style rather, has actually been centered around seeing people, giving instructions, asserting your power, telling people not to, to question you. And that's what we saw. And if you look at the work of Brené Brown, who talks a whole lot about vulnerability, you would actually see that the reason we're having these gaps is because we also don't have leaders that are vulnerable, to their staff or to their peers in their workspace. And we don't say being vulnerable, telling everybody about your problems, but also acknowledging that I'm an individual, I also go through challenges. As much as we might have pressure on the floor, I also have pressure, at the top. But you don't share that, because you would feel that will take away, your chips on your shoulder. Oh, he's like this, but he's also, having problems. You don't have the emotional maturity to be able to appreciate, the social setting of your team, and taking into account or taking into stock what some of their challenges are they're going through, because you believe that they can't go through challenges. They're here for productivity. And for you, productivity is separated from wellness. Productivity is separated from your emotions, or from your challenges back at home. But no, they're intertwined. So people don't really get to understand that. And it goes back to, what are the kind of processes and people that we are bringing into our space that are going to help us to build there. And organizations, they need to be honest to themselves. The question is, are corporates honest in terms of what their needs are? Are they being honest in terms of what are their current challenges are? They don't, because being vulnerable to say, as an organization, I'm struggling with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's going to take away, my reputation in the industry, my reputation in the market, and people, don't want that. We have people that struggle with courageous conversations. We have managers that cannot honestly tell you to say, Celia, I think you're not well suited for this position, because these are where your skills are sitting. And for that, I actually want to try you in a different role, or with a different project, to make sure that we leverage off you holistically in terms of what you can bring. And we have managers that would actually be punitive to people purely because of their developmental areas. You don't get an opportunity to look at their strengths in terms of how I can use them effectively. One person makes a mistake and they're crucified, for it. That cannot be the future of work that we're talking about. And people don't understand, like I said earlier, intercultural, skills, interpersonal skills and all of those things. When you are a baby boomer or a generation X, having to deal with a generation Z, it's different. Those people, like you said, they will question you. They will actually want to understand, but why are we doing this? What is the value? How does it fit into the value chain? And you will be so irritated, and maybe you are losing an opportunity on innovation because you do not allow yourself to be questioned, because you believe that, or you come from an era whereby a younger person cannot actually question you. And they're not questioning you because they want to challenge what you're telling them, but they actually want to understand how, what I'm doing, does it bring value? If it doesn't bring value, maybe we need to question, why am I doing it? And by virtue of allowing such, you can actually learn. So we find that the education and the socialization around having multicultural groups existing in a workplace, it's not something that is given enough attention, or resources to invest in how we develop around having these different generations coexisting in one space. Because currently we have organizations that have 4 generations to 5 generations that are existing, but it's a clash, it's a struggle, because no one is confident enough, or no one is willing to invest the resources and time to say, guys, let's understand what each and every one of us bring. Because with all those generations, everybody has a space, right? Everybody has a space. You might be a baby boomer. You have the institutional knowledge that I might need as a millennial. And as a millennial, I might be technologically savvy, and very proactive in things that can actually help you to use your institutional knowledge, effectively. As soon as we can embrace that we are needed, and we are also, important, and we all have a place in the chain, then we will get to a better space.
Absolutely. I think, operating from a place of fear is often one of the biggest hindrances that we face in the workplace, and the relationships that we build in the workplace, and impedes our ability to be able to embrace diversity of thought and perspectives and approaches to the way in which we do things. And COVID-19 is probably for our generation, particularly the biggest change that we have faced, and it has challenged us in so many ways, but it has also now forced us to confront questions about what does it actually mean to be a professional? What is actually my career path? Is this what I want to do? Is there more that I can do? The work that I do, I may be good at it, but is it fulfilling? A lot of people are starting to ask themselves those self-actualizing questions.
Sure.
And there's a lot of conversation that's coming up now around transferable skills.
Yes.
And we talk about it because this is the space that we play in. We understand exactly what it means. But for somebody who maybe has seen the term or not even heard the term, how would you explain transferable skills?
Sure. Transferable skills are skills that you actually learn from one job to the other that you can actually use. For example, let's assume a relationship building. You can learn the skill around relationship building, maybe being in a marketing space, because you work with a lot of external customers, and you learn that, when you have multiple stakeholders, you need to prioritize them, you need to make time, you need to check up on them, you need to maintain relationships, because there are benefits to a mutually good relationship. Once you've mastered that skill in your current workplace, you can actually go and use the very same skill in your next position in another organization. So in simple ways is that those are the skills that you learn, and you can move around with them from one place to another, and you can apply them in different scenarios, in different workplaces, in different community initiatives that you actually work at. So it's something that you learn and then you can carry with you, versus the technical skills which are important to you having to do a specific deliverable, for example, coding. Right, probably in the engineering space, those are technical skills that you need to be able to execute a certain mandate. But transferable skills, they can be used anywhere across in different settings, whether you're engaging with people that are at a higher level or your peers. We're talking about critical skills, problem solving. We always solve problems at home, at work, in our community. So when we're talking about transferable skills, we're talking about such skills that you can use at different places in different scenarios. And those are the skills that will also help you to grow beyond the technical role that you're occupying.
And one of the transferable skills that is crucial for all of us is communication, right? And
Right.
often, and particularly people who are in roles that are very kind of technical, where they just are sitting, doing something or fixing something, or, they tend to shy away from or think that they don't need to have good communication skills.
Sure.
And yet, when you think about how careers advance and how networks are built, communication lies at the core of it.
Sure.
And one of the things that I often have conversations with people about is around how challenged they feel when they need to network. How do they approach it? What do they say? They don't know what to speak about. They walk in and they kind of just stand there and they wait for people to come to them and say hi first. And so from one of the tools that I love using is the elevator pitch.
Sure.
What are some of the elements of a really effective elevator pitch that people can actually begin practicing and using to help them break into this world of networking and communicating with confidence?
Yeah. The good thing is self-awareness. Self-awareness is very important. You can't have an elevator speech if you don't know who you are and what you stand for. And as soon as you understand that, it enables you to talk about yourself. Because remember, an elevator speech, ordinarily or in layman terms, it's about selling yourself. What is your sales pitch, right? So who are you and what are you there for? And what is the impact and the contribution that you're doing? And those are very key. So if you can just get those few things right, then you have your 90 seconds elevator speech. If it's for 2 minutes or whatever, it's okay, but those are key things. So have an opportunity and actually having to understand, who am I, what do I want to do, what am I doing here, what will I do beyond this, and how will I position this to someone else if they were to quickly ask me, or if this was probably a speech that's going to get me to my promotion. And I think that's how people need to think about it. And then back to your point around networking, I think there's a misconception around networking as well, because people often assume networking with an event. They think it's a once-off event. You go to an event at an institution, probably it's a book launch perhaps, and then you're thinking that is not networking. By virtue of you being there, you're not networking with anyone. Networking is when you actually take that step in terms of, what am I going to be doing at that book launch, and why is it important? Why is that book important to me? Who are the people that are going to be attending that book launch, and who is the one person that I would actually want to talk to? Or if I was to engage with someone around the book launch, what are the questions that I would ask a person? And if you have went to an event and spoken to 1 or 2 people, that's enough, right? And I said it's not an event because after you've spoken to that person, what did you talk about and how do you follow through that conversation? And networking, it's actually that follow through after you have met someone, the follow through after you have actually attended that event. And I think that is the piece that's missing in the networking puzzle, because people think, I attend so many network events, but, I don't really still not know anyone, So it's that art. The art is like, find people that will be critical for you at that event, questions that will be critical to the conversation, and how do you take the conversation beyond the event.
Absolutely. Moving with purpose.
Sure.
I think so often we get so comfortable with just going for the sake of, for vibes, as these kids say, and we don't actually approach it from a strategic perspective to say, okay, I'm going there with an intention. What is that intention?
Yes.
And being able to reflect on that at the end of the day, and say, so did I actually achieve what I wanted to achieve?
Definitely.
And what are the next steps? One of my favorite things to ask myself is what is the next best step following any interaction that I have? Because it helps you really plot down a very kind of direct and focused way of approaching relationship building.
Sure.
And relationship building is not only about what you can get from other people. It's also about what value you can offer them.
Definitely.
And it's always important to always bear that in mind. Always offer before you take, because that is what makes people more receptive to you.
Yes.
Now, hybrid environments. In the office, out of the office, need to be in 2 days a week, need to be in full time. Where do you see the future of work actually going?
Right. I thought about this at some point, and somebody said, or there's this common saying that says, the more things change, the more things stay the same, right? For some time, for like a year and a half to 2 years, we were all at home and we're all happy. Now everybody's back on the road, right? Then there is traffic. But I believe that flexible work, hybrid work or working from anywhere, which is part of the hybrid model, is the future of work, because we have seen again through the pandemic that people value different things in their lives. And by that, as an employer of the future, you need to be able to cater for different needs for your workforce. So you will not have a linear workforce or a one-dimensional workforce, rather. That is, everybody's coming to work from 8 to 5. People want to be there for their families and for their kids. People want to take care of their health better. People want to invest in their development, whether, through academic or, through initiatives in their communities. So if you need a well-rounded workforce, you need to somehow be able to cater for that. And for you to cater for that, it will actually talk to you being hybrid and being flexible, even around the offerings of benefits that you have for your people, because what might be important to you might not be important to me. You might actually want to work maybe half day in the office and half day at home, because maybe you might have your daughter to pick up from school, you might have a play date. It might not be important to me as Boniwe, because I don't have a child, I don't have a family, so I don't mind working up until late in the evening. When you're providing for medical aid, I might not have any illnesses, my health might be in a good condition, so maybe I might just need a hospital plan. But you might have somebody that has chronic illnesses that might need a comprehensive plan, and organizations need to cater for such. And that also talks to then your work model, to say, with the workforce that I have, with the model that I have, with the flexible benefits that I have, am I getting the best out of everybody? And you're not going to get the best out of everybody by dictating only one way of working. Some people's brain, like myself, my brain definitely works late in the evening. I struggle during the day. I promise you. I do try, I do things, but I struggle. But late in the evening, then my brain starts to function. But unfortunately, the South African labor market does not really cater for that at this point in time. And then you have people that are early risers, and they work in the morning, they're creative at that point in time, and they say by 1 o'clock I need to be done with my work. But how do you make sure that these two people come together to deliver for you? And they can, right? But because we are being taught, and we have this work situation, or working times from 8 to 5, everybody has to fit in there, or everybody has to come to the office. We've got introverts and extroverts. How do you make sure that you get the best out of both with everybody else? Other people, they get their energy from interactions or from being around people. Other people do not. And those that do not, there's nothing wrong with them, because that is not their measure of their intelligence or capability. So you need to bring that together. So I think for me, hybrid model is the way to go, and it needs to be very accommodative. It needs to be very flexible. But again, it also comes back to the management and the leadership layer that we have that's going to be able to support that. So if a manager, their emotional intelligence is not well-rounded, their interpersonal skills are not well-rounded, they are not even empathetic, and they are not even understanding to different social ills and challenges that we face in our country, that is also not going to work. So you need to couple a hybrid working model with a sound management and leadership layer as well.
Absolutely. So right now we are in South Africa, our land.
Right.
We are faced with a number of challenges, right? We have got an economy that is struggling. We have got a cost of living that has skyrocketed. We have load shedding for 9 hours a day, if you're lucky,
Sure.
We have salaries that don't increase at that rate. We have people who are already underpaid as it stands. And oftentimes, these are very real things that we're dealing with.
Sure.
All of us
Sure.
are dealing with this pressure at different levels, right? There are some people who have some sort of buffer because they have the privilege of maybe earning well, and they've been able to invest and have all of these things, so they can they have some fat built around them.
Sure.
But the very real reality is that for most South Africans, majority of our population does not have that. They don't even have the means to make it to the end of the month comfortably. Now, these people come into the workplace, they have a job to do. the cost of public transportation has gone up because the petrol price has gone up every single month. Their groceries have gone up. School fees have gone up. Everything is going up and your salary is not moving. And they are going to blame the organization.
Sure.
Because you're not paying me enough. You're not paying me at the rate of inflation. You're not countering, or you're not considering English. You're not considering all of these factors that I'm faced with financially. But at the same time, the organization is also dealing with those same factors, right? Because business may not be as they would also ideally want it to be. And if you are employing people, you can't give everyone an increase at the same time, all the time, at the same rate. How can we bridge that gap of understanding between the two? Because bridging the gap practically is going to take a very long time, if at all. So how do we mend the divide?
That's a higher grade question, I think.
That's why I gave it to you, because I don't know.
Like, how do I answer that, guys? Right? It's so funny because as I was coming here, I was actually attending a webinar talking about the same thing, right? I think, first of all, it's also around the openness, between the employer and the employees, right? Because oftentimes we find that employers are not sharing as much information as they should around the operations, around the finances, and all of those things. And people would assume that they are also making money, they are also making profit, but at the detriment or at the expense of the employees, right? So they need to be open, and we actually need a collective engagement around the private sector, the public sector, the people, the labor movements as well, in terms of having these conversations. And unfortunately, our country is a capitalist country. As much as we would want to be a socialist country where, nobody goes to bed hungry, everybody has shelter, everybody has access to, to healthcare. Unfortunately, we are not there. But it's around, that engagement and the flexibility around what centers this employment relationship that we have, and being brutally honest, and in our honesty, how do we co-craft and co-create solutions? And where we're sitting right now, or with many corporates, we're not co-creating solutions. We're not co-crafting solutions. So your employer comes and says, this is what we're going to be doing, right? And especially where you find your workforce is not really unionized, or probably it's unionized, but they don't really have an active and a powerful union. So, sometimes then they get dictated to in terms of what they need to do. And by virtue of applying that method, you get a lot of resistance, right? We see companies retrenching in certain instances, but they are not wanting to to share their financial statements. Why? If you're saying the reason that you're retrenching is because we're not profitable, show me that we are not profitable. And if I'm coming to work every day doing my best, getting new customers, selling new clients, or policies and all of those things, and I am doing it month in and month out without fail, with the standards that you have set for myself, and then you come and you tell me that you can't afford to give me an increase, then tell me, what am I doing? And I think we lack that level of robust conversations and debates, and they are actually missing. How train rates went up, or are they going up on the 1st of June? I think they're going up. Somebody sent a message and said, this is the price that it's going to cost me to travel with Gautrain every month, and I can't afford it. I can't afford to come to work 5 days a week. I need to go speak to my manager and ask them to actually, work 3 days in the office and 2 days at home for me to be able to buffer the cost. And it goes back to what I said, the openness and the honesty that really centers around the conversations, around, our wellness, our economic challenges, and the social ills that we are facing. Unless we get to that space of normalizing these conversations and moving with the times and making changes as the challenges come, it's going to be easier. Our South African labor market and labor force is not as flexible to adapt and to move with the changes as they really happen. We are so reactive that we wait for something big to happen. We wait for an outburst. We wait for a situation. And sometimes even when the situation arrives, we are not ready to deal with it at that point in time. And I think once we can try and drive to move to that direction, then we will be better to deal with those, those challenges in the workspace.
Now, there's so many challenges, that we've chatted about today, but there's also a lot of opportunities. And for anybody who's watching or listening to this conversation, I'm pretty sure that they too have a lot of questions about, okay, yes, we've seen this, we've noticed this, we acknowledge this, but what do we do about it? Right? How do you begin to tackle this?
I think for me, it's important for people to also be proactive and take ownership, of their situations and of their careers as well. Oftentimes, people are waiting for someone to tell them that it's time for you to move. It's time for you to study. It's time for you to, maximize on this particular opportunity. And because of that, if someone doesn't tell us, then we don't get to move or we don't get to do anything else. And people need to remember that their careers and their growth, whether in entrepreneurship or in corporate, really solely, rely on you as an individual. And what is it that you are building around yourself to be able to help you move ahead? Could it be through coaching? Could it be through mentorship? Could it be through, professional bodies? But even with those in your basket, what are you doing and what decisions are we making? So for me, it's about moving to the ownership space, right? You can have all these resources, all these people around you, but if you do not really own the narrative around your situation, and also look for a silver lining. There's always a silver lining in the challenge, and we often don't see the silver lining because we are so fixated and so passionate about this closing door that we use all our energy to try to keep it open, but it's not opening up. And again, on a personal level and also probably on a spiritual level, sometimes it's just taking that leap of faith. It's also taking leap of faith to say, you know what, I know what I'm meant to be. I know what I want to achieve, but that comes with sacrifices and compromises. Yeah. And because we are also operating from a fear, perspective, we don't want to, because what if it doesn't work? Oftentimes we don't say, what if it works, right? And if it doesn't work, what were the learnings from that failure, And for me, it's those things that will really get us to where we need to go with all these challenges. There are challenges, but there are opportunities. How many businesses came out of COVID-19? How many people started, saying, I need to focus on my health because of the pandemic? How many people said, I need to advance my skills? How many people said, I need to actually invest in data analytics, or BI, because they are the skills of the future due to that? So look at adversity, but look for the positive and the silver lining in that adversity. And I think we lack that quite a lot as individuals.
Absolutely, because every challenge presents an opportunity. The challenge exists because there is an opportunity. Definitely. And having that frame of mind really does become a game changer for you professionally as well as in your personal life. Boniwe, gosh, this conversation could go on forever and a day, and I think I'll probably have you back on because there's such a vastness to the context around people and their careers, because you're not just dealing with skills and outputs and performance, you're dealing with people, and there's such an opportunity for us to truly embrace humanity. And this is not even something we should be talking about, because we should be recognizing each other's humanity as much as we recognize our own. But I think there's just so much work and so many conversations that still need to be had. But we will wrap it up here for today. So for anybody who wants to learn more, wants to follow you, wants to interact with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on my social media pages, on IG, which is Instagram, it's Boniwe, your HR specialist. Then LinkedIn, Facebook, it's Boniwe Dunster. Twitter, it's Dunster_Boniwe. And you can also visit my website, which is blueeaglehc.co.za, and then I'll be able to, to respond to those messages over there.
I encourage you to follow her if you're not already following her. She shares so much information, so freely, information that will really help you navigate your career. It'll help you learn a lot. And I think, if there's one thing that you take away from the conversation that we've had today, it's that reflect, take ownership of where you're at and where you could potentially go, but also be open to learning from other people. I think it's so important to not be fixated on, I'm only going to learn from a CEO. I'm only going to learn from a veteran. because that keeps you fixed and seeking people who think the way that you do and do things the way that you do, and that does not enable your growth. So open up your mind and be willing to learn from others, and also share what you know with others. Nobody can take away your light from you shining it. So this has been another episode of the Workplace Revolution with me, Sihle Polani. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.